If you're watching this, then chances are you already know what one of these is, the Bentley Continental. The first of the all-new Bentleys developed under Volkswagen ownership. What we've actually got here is the Flying Spur, which is the four-door version. It's a longer car, came along in 2005, but the basic Continental, the two-door GT, was launched in 2003. They're complicated cars, but they're complicated by the standards of 2003. So if you're in the market for one of them today, what do they like to own? What do you need to know? Right, here's what you need to know. Well, starting with the bodywork, they don't seem to rust. Certainly you're not going to be looking at sort of structural corrosion like you would with maybe an old Turbo R or something like that. But there are a few little foibles with these cars. The engine was sort of, well, they sort of shrink wrap the body over the engine as far as I can tell, and it's actually official Bentley service procedure to take the wing off for quite a few procedures. So you will notice that the spline bolts on the top of the wing have often got the paint missing. Don't be alarmed by that, it doesn't mean the car's had a massive front ender. But on the other hand, it does pay to check, because they're quite expensive cars to repair, and I think quite often people have a minor bump. They're fearful that the insurance company might write the car off, and so they repair it with second-hand panels. So just check that, you know, for instance, you haven't got a bumper off a red car that's been aerosol black or something like that. And on the subject of bumpers, make sure it all lines up properly, because it's easy to break the fittings when you take the bumper off, and the front end does have to come off for quite a lot of the service items. Even one of the headlight bulbs, really you're meant to take the bumper off, I believe. Other than that, yeah, they withstand the British climate pretty well. The paintwork obviously is really high quality, so you know you don't need to worry about that sort of thing. But one thing you might notice on a few of them is around the edges of the glass, you get a funny sort of discoloration, and it's because the double glazed glass is starting to delaminate. And often people try and camouflage that by tinting the windows. So if you're looking at a car that's got a tint on the side windows at the front, that can often mean that the glass is starting to delaminate. It's just something to keep an eye out for. So the engine, and this is where you will spend the money if you have to. Like I said, they've basically shrink wrapped the entire body shell over the engine, and the biggest problem you've got is access. Bentley tell you to routinely take the engine out to do a load of jobs. For instance, we've had a problem where the engine management light was on this car, and it relates to two sensors that are right down the back of the engine bay there. You've got the engine here and you've got the bulkhead here. There's just no room, so you know, the Bentley specialists can help you out. They've got little tricks and tips, like they can tilt the engine very slightly enough to get a hand in, and if the sensor isn't welded in, they can get it out. Little things like that will really catch you out. Also, if you've got a misfire, well, you'd think it would be an easy matter of just changing a coil pack. It's not that easy, because some of the coil packs are hidden under the inlet manifold, so if it's two of the front coils, you'll have to take the entire inlet manifold off to do it. It's not impossible, it's a DIY job really. You just undo the bolts and you can sort of hinge it up and do it. But again, it's something that might catch you out. And a lot of the emissions equipment is sort of underneath the engine, so either the wing will have to come out or the engine will have to be lowered or whatever. There are some really expensive jobs in here. If you've got a pre-2006 car, the engine thermostat is, I think, £900 plus VAT, something like that at the moment. So, you know, you don't want to be replacing that. The later cars like this, it's more like 300. The water pump may only be 150 quid or something, but the entire front end of the car has to come off to change it. So you need to be aware that it can bite you, this W12 engine, it really can. And it's worth, well, all the Bentley specialists will say it's worth setting aside £1,000, £2,000 a year just as a little bit of a slush fund for maintenance if you do have to have the engine out, because of course, even if you have one of the service jobs that requires the front end to come off, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. Apparently you just hinge out the radiator, you hinge out the air conditioning radiator. You don't really, do you? Not after, you know, 20 years on the road. It's all going to break, so you know it is going to get expensive. It won't happen every year, but you know, when it does, be prepared for it. Something else that can get expensive is the suspension. It's air suspension all round. You can get aftermarket struts if you have to replace one. They are quite reliable, but the car weighs 2.5 tons, so it's heavy on its suspension, and you'll end up with lower arm joints and things like that frequently failing. You'll get a knock and a rattle over potholes and speed bumps, and you know, you just know they won't last forever. And also the air suspension needs to be calibrated to the right height. When we got this car, it was right up at the back and really low down at the front, and the front valance had obviously been catching on speed bumps. And that's because you need the right software and a laptop and the knowledge in order to set it up. I've done it, and I've discovered how to do it, but you do need to buy the right software, either the VCDS, which is quite expensive, or I used a slightly cheaper version, German company supplies, called Carport. You measure from the hub centre to the wheel arch, and you enter in the measured figure for all 4 corners. You then tell the car you've changed it, and you hit go, and the car sorts itself out. You know, if everything's working properly, you can do it yourself, but you will need that software. And to be honest, I wouldn't recommend owning one of these cars without some diagnostic software, or at least you know, a basic code reader. Really, you want more than a basic code reader, though. You want something Bentley specific, and a lot of systems that claim to work on any car, they just won't. So be aware of that. While we're looking at the front end here, don't overlook the cost of brakes. We had a good trade discount. It still cost us, I think, £1,200 for 2 discs and a set of pads for the front alone. So these are expensive brakes. They weigh about 10 kilos. I think they were the biggest brakes of any production car when they came out, something like that. So that does get expensive. Don't, you know, if you're looking at one of these cars, do have a big of a look with a torch in through the wheel, just to see how much meat you've got left on those, because Bentley don't allow much wear on the discs. Yeah. One problem you can get with these cars is the boot release can give trouble. As I said, this is the Flying Spur. It should have an electric boot lid, this car, and it doesn't actually work. I've had to raise it by hand. It can be really expensive to fix these, so we've not actually fixed it, but in order to shut it, you have to press the boot close button, then you have to push the boot down manually. And you can see someone's rerouted the emergency release here, and the GT has a similar emergency release. It's hidden behind one of the seat squabs in the back, and you have to pull the upholstery out and pull it really hard. And the thing is, the boot lock will sometimes fail, and you're going to need that emergency release, so just check that it's there and that it works. And also, while you're there, check that someone hasn't messed about with the boot to try and force it open and damaged all the panel work.
I suppose it comes under the heading of interior, but one thing it's worth remembering is that it's definitely worth having insurance cover for your windscreen on the policy, because we had to have a new screen on this car. We had a crack that just developed in the cold weather. I think the glass alone is £2,300 because it's a Bentley only part, so just make sure that's covered on the insurance, then it'll only cost you a few £100 instead of thousands. One thing I noticed with this car is that there's no aux input for the radio at all. You can't play your own music. There's not a jack plug, there's no Bluetooth. The car's got Bluetooth for the hands-free phone calls, but you can't stream music through it. And that's actually a bit limiting in this day and age. And you can get a replacement head unit. I think it's called Bentley head unit replacement, but it's a massive panel because the radio is an integral part of the dashboard. And because it controls quite a few other car features, it doesn't always function quite right, I don't think. I found that the easiest thing to do was to get a Bluetooth adapter, which simply replaces the CD changer in the glove box. It was a Grom audio part. I paid full price, didn't get a freebie there. I've been very pleased with it. It was £130, I think, and it allows you to stream music off your phone, and it selects it as the CD source. You can connect simultaneously on an iPhone, I've discovered, to both the Bentley hands-free phone call kit and to the music streaming device. So in the Spur, you've got a slightly odd system where the rear headrests raise themselves when someone enters the back, and I don't know why that is, but it's got a common point of failure. So one goes up on this car and one doesn't, but I don't see the point of it, so I haven't bothered mending it. You'll hear a sort of buzzing noise when you open the back door. I don't know why. I don't know why they designed it like that. I think it's something to do with crash safety and the height of the headrest, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Of course, there are a lot of these cars around. Bentley made these cars in huge numbers compared to anything previously. So if you've got problems like bad scratches on this piano black fitting here and things like that, you'll get second-hand parts. But it's always worth remembering that they're not as common as a full Mondeo. So if you want a second-hand bit of trim or something, it might take a while. You've got to be patient with these cars, really. If you want to save a little bit of money here and there, patience is the key to that. You need to sit on eBay and look for second-hand parts to arrive, or use one of the Bentley parts suppliers and pay accordingly.
So a few pointers there. Should you buy a Continental? Well, you shouldn't buy a Continental unless you're absolutely committed to the idea of buying a Continental. These aren't cheap cars to run. The idea of, it's just a big phaeton, that is an absolute fallacy. There's so much on these cars that is different from the Volkswagen cars. Yes, they use a few Volkswagen parts here and there, and you can get lucky with a bit of parts interchange. There are some suspension bits and things like the parking sensors that can be interchanged, and a few of the electronic modules, but don't expect it to come with Golf running costs. You are dealing with a Bentley, and it is an expensive proposition. I think as a guide, even the oil for the service, just the oil alone was £200. You won't get a bill from a specialist that's much under £1,000 very often. Tyres are £200 each, things like that. So just be committed before you take the plunge, and bear in mind that you will get, I think I got 6 miles to gallon the other day on the school run. On a motorway run you'll get 21. You'll hear owners tell you that they get more, but I think they're trying to justify it to the other half most of the time. The reality is 21 is pretty much your maximum. But if you want a Continental, You're not going to find a W12 twin turbo engine anywhere else, are you? And these are mighty beasts, but they are mightily complex, and you know that comes with its own problems. But I would say buy on condition, don't get hung up on spec and mileage. You definitely need to buy one that's been used every year, sort of 3,000 miles a year or something like that. Don't buy one that's been standing around, that's a really bad idea. But if you do find a nice one, well, they're not going to make cars like this for much longer, are they?